My name is Mark Brodeur. I work in post-anesthesia care. I'll tell you a brief situation that we run into occasionally down there. Post-anesthesia care is probably one of the better staff units. We always have a core number of staff, no matter the number of patients. Occasionally you run into a situation, probably about a month ago, I had a patient, and simple procedure, easy recovery, then another patient came in. We had a whole bunch of patients who were waiting for beds on the floor. There were no beds. They didn't have the staff to bring the patients upstairs. So the patients were being held in the PACU. So then the time comes where the evening shift comes in, so now they have the staff. Those patients can now go upstairs. And they have to be transported by a nurse. So the nurses are bringing the patients upstairs. There's 2 nurses left. I have one patient, I get a second because there's only 2 of us in the PACU at the time. The other nurse has a critical patient. She takes a second patient. And then all of a sudden, 2 more patients come out. So there's 2 of us, total of 6 patients. My patients are all right. I go over to the first patient who's sort of obtunded because of the medication. They're not able to support their own airway. So in that, I mean, their tongue kind of slides in the back of their mouth and closes off their airway so they can't get air from their mouth into their lungs. So simple maneuver, you just lift up their chin, opens up their airway, and air can get in there and they're fine. And they breathe on their own, and you're able to support that very easily, very minimal intervention. While I'm holding this person's chin up, I am with the other patient that just came in trying to get rapport on this other patient. Meanwhile, while this is happening, my first patient is now over the rail throwing up all over the floor. And I can't leave the patient who can't support their own airway. So I can't help the person who's currently vomiting all over the place. And not only does that affect me as a nurse not being able to provide the care that I'm obligated to provide and I want to provide as a caring person, but also that patient is uncomfortable, they're throwing up, they're going to end up being there longer. Those situations in the post-anesthesia care usually last for a very short amount of time. We do have crisis staff, which is a nurse that floats around the hospital, a very high level of care, can work in a whole bunch of different units. That's kind of the backup plan, but it's the backup plan for the emergency room, the ICU, all of the floors, the PACU. So at the time, that nurse was in the emergency room with a trauma. They couldn't leave. So it left us with no backup plan, and we're left in a situation where we're not able to be in more than one place at a time, which I think is a common theme with all of the stories. We're saying we physically cannot be in more than one place at a time. You have 3 staff, one person holding somebody's neck because they've fallen and they're worried that there's a break, and you don't want the person to become paralyzed. So it's very important to have all those staff present. So those 3 staff are in the room, you only have 3 staff on the floor, somebody else's call bell's going off. They have to go to the bathroom. They no longer can wait, then they try to get up on their own and fall on the floor, and then that comes back at us. But we're saying that it's not possible for us to be in a room holding somebody's neck so they don't become paralyzed and help that person to go to the bathroom at the same time. I'll tell a very personal experience that I've had at the hospital. My mother had surgery, a fairly routine procedure. She recovered in post-anesthesia care, went up to the floor. As soon as she went upstairs, I went home to go take a nap because I had to work that evening. I called probably about an hour later, and her friend was still there, and she was just saying she didn't seem right. So whenever somebody says somebody doesn't seem right, to a nurse that kind of sets off a flag. You might not be able to put your finger on what the problem is, especially if you don't work in the medical field. But you know there's something wrong. So I drove back to the hospital just to check on her, because if somebody says something's not right, you have to address that. So I went in the room. She was unable to lift her head up off the bed. She has no medical problems or really past medical history, generally very healthy. Unable to lift her head up off the bed, white as the sheet, severe shoulder pain. Her blood pressure was 80 over 40, which means she doesn't have enough pressure in her system to perfuse, to get blood to her organs, to her brain, to make sure everything's properly working. And she's telling her friend, just go home, I just need to rest, because my mom doesn't complain. I then went to go, I spoke with the secretary, asked, who's taking care of my mother, where are the people. So it turns out both of the aides, one was floated to another floor, the other one was pulled to sick. So there were no nursing assistants. Had there been anybody to go in the room and look at my mother, they would have immediately seen the problem. They would have silenced the alarm, be able to see that her blood pressure was going down, her heart rate was going up. The nurse that was taking care of her, a very qualified nurse, skilled nurse. She had 6 patients on the evening shift, 3 of which were fresh post-op. She was settling in a post-op. She could not be with my mother and a post-op at the same time. There was no one to alert the nurse that there was a problem with my mother. There were no nursing assistants, and the charge had a full assignment. So the charge was on the other side of the floor, taking care of all her patients. So there was no backup plan. There was no ability for that nurse to be in 2 places. So I pulled the nurse out of the room she was in. She came, just looked at my mother, did lab work. She got transfusion after transfusion, rushed back to the OR. It turns out during the procedure, they nicked an artery in her abdomen. So she was bleeding out in her abdomen, which is a risk that happens when you have surgery. But it's identified in things like altered mental status, not thinking clearly, change in skin color, change in vital signs, things that nurses look at every day, if there is somebody available to actually see those things. She was rushed back to the OR, they fixed it, but then she ended up in the ICU for a week and a half. This was supposed to be a procedure for an overnight stay. Had it been caught earlier, all of those things could have been avoided. She wouldn't have had to get unit after unit after unit of blood. And with every unit of blood somebody gets, there's a risk associated with that. With every procedure, there's a risk associated with that. So with all of this delay, with a completely qualified, great nurse who was unable to be in more than one place at one time, my mother had to go through all that. All these things occurred to her that could have been avoided if she had the person present. If there'd been a charge nurse without an assignment who could have just been like, oh, that's beeping, let me go check out what it is. If there'd been a nursing assistant to go in and say, oh, I see that her blood pressure is changing, I should alert the nurse. If there had been anyone available, and had I just gone to bed that night, I wouldn't have been there to go get the nurse and bring her in the room. I don't know how much longer that would have gone on and how much longer my mother would have lasted. So it's just it is scary, but it's a real example of a risk that patients are put in. And as nurses, we have a union, and we have a protected voice that allows us to say we need help, we need to do something. We cannot work like this. It's not fair to our patients, it's not fair to our community, it's not fair to our coworkers or ourselves. I think that with the examples that we've all shown before, it's clear that even though we do excellent work, we skip our breaks, we don't eat, we don't drink, while we're taking care of your loved ones, your relatives, your neighbors, and we do it because we love it and it's important to us, but we're saying there's a point where we can't be there as the safety net. It takes away our ability to advocate for a patient who might need that extra help, or who might not have their current needs being addressed, and they might need somebody to speak up for them. I think that there's also another thing that we've seen in several other communities where community members get together, they form a group, and they say, these are things that our hospital needs. This is a community hospital. It's a private institution, but it really belongs to the community. It is there specifically to take care of all of us, our family members, when we're at our most vulnerable, when we're not able to speak for ourselves. And having some sort of community group that might help increase your voices to say, I want my family member cared for in at least this level of care. I don't want my family member to be ignored or not have the services they need because there wasn't somebody there to speak up for them. So if anyone is interested on being on any sort of community board, maybe at the end, you can use the back, you can sign up, something like that, just let us know. But that's it for me. Thank you.